Here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the right of a human being to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities. By any means necessary.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
If you're hearing his voice,
You're hearing the voice of reason.
You certainly come to the right place.
Welcome. So Pope Francis is in town, and we saw the beautiful scene of President Obama and his family greeting the Pope as he got off of the plane, and it was a beautiful scene. President Obama with his family, and we have been expecting exactly what has been occurring, and that is the simultaneous meltdown of Republican, evangelical, conservative zealots who have placed their love for unfettered capitalism above their own faith. And it's not just about capitalism. I mean, it's about all things conservative ideology, including global warming or their position against the idea of global warming. It's a fascinating thing to see. And so the next several days will be a case study worth watching and worth analyzing to see the level to which people who are ostensibly Christian will go to oppose the greatest, I don't know the right adjective. I mean, I'm not Catholic, so I can't tell you the most significant. I think it's fair that we can all agree on that. The most significant leader of any Christian organization on the planet of the earth, on the face of the earth. You will see over the next several days, I mean, unbridled opposition and rhetoric and positioning, because the Pope Francis, is actually has read the Bible and actually is taking positions that are biblical. And I think it is a revealing time. It is a very revealing time and opportunity for us to see how unchristian Republicans really are. And the only reason that matters, right? They have the absolute right to be like whatever religion they want to be. The only reason it matters is because they constantly use their version of religion to beat back against anyone they disagree with. So here in one hand, they're using their faith and their religion to oppose everything progressive, everything in terms of equality, everything in terms of fixing our environment. They use their religion to do that. But now they're met with the most significant leader of their time, of our time. And he is actually, governing, ruling, whatever the Pope does. I don't really know anything about the actual job description of the Pope. I don't know if he governs. I don't know if he rules or if he just pastors. I don't know. But the most significant person who is actually governing and administrating and leading, there's a good word. He's leading based on biblical principles. So over the next couple of days, I want you to keep your eyes out. And I'm going to dig into it a little bit more, because I think it's fascinating that you see presidential candidates who in one breath are using the Bible to beat back against gay marriage, to fight back against any conversation on global warming, to fight back against just about everything. They even use the Bible to justify unbridled capitalism, right? And then in the next sentence, they will oppose the Pope because the Pope is saying, no, you're actually wrong on capitalism. You're actually wrong on the environment. You're actually wrong on the way that you are trying to oppress people who are homosexual. So it's going to be fascinating. I'll dig into that a little bit more, but I also want to dig into this video of Noam Chomsky that came out from over the weekend. And it actually ties into this conversation because he's talking about over the last 30 years, over the last generation, the same thing that I say all the time on the show, this period of neoliberalism. We've seen nothing but the shifting to the right. And because Republicans have shifted so far to the right, it has become necessary for them to mobilize a voting base that has always been here. But the religious zealots, the bigots, the racists, there's a word that he used, and I can't remember right now, but I'll play the clip. But he describes it perfectly, and it goes perfectly in line with the conversation about how these people who use religion to guide their entire conservative ideology are so extreme in their beliefs that they actually are going to oppose the most significant leader in the Christian faith today. So there's Noam Chomsky. Then I want to talk more about, it's brilliant how all of this connects. Martin Shkreli from Turing Pharmaceutical. I dealt with him yesterday. I may play a little bit of that clip again, but I want to talk about how this is not the first time he's done this in terms of acquiring the rights to a prescription drug and hiking the price up. He did it with Daraprim, and he raised that price by 5,500%. He's done it also with a drug that is used for childhood cancer, kidney cancer, and not just childhood, but it affects children as well. So I want to discuss that. And then I want to discuss the company, the executive CEO, former CEO at this point, who has now been sentenced to 28 years in prison because of intentional, they intentionally ignored the salmonella breakout. The factors that would lead to the salmonella breakout and led to deaths and thousands of people getting sick, but they ignored it because of convenience for profits. We are really living in an interesting age where everything is propaganda has been utilized so efficiently in America over the last 35 years, so efficiently that we are existing in a time where the conversation is not about rational debates. The conversation is about demagoguery. The conversation is about extremes and false dichotomies, in the sense of anyone who opposes situations like Martin Shkreli and Turing Pharmaceuticals hiking the price of HIV/AIDS medication up by 5,500%. Anyone who opposes that is a socialist, right? That's the extreme world that we live in. So it's not about having a rational discussion about whether or not this is something that is either good or bad, or could it have been done better? Did they need that extreme increase? Did they need those extreme profits to the detriment of people who depend on it, people who are poor, people who are middle class, who are struggling just to survive as it is? Do we need to exacerbate the healthcare costs in America by allowing pharmaceutical companies to pump up these prices so high? Reasonable conversations like that. But once you start having those conversations, you're automatically labeled as a communist, fascist, Leninist, Maoist by conservatives who wrap all of that inside of their religious bigotry. Inside of, they don't consider it bigotry. They wrap it inside of their religious dogma. So that is the world that we're living in today. And I think that it's fascinating. It's fascinating that it has taken us this long to realize that we've been hoodwinked. Now, I know that there are a lot of people on the far left who never lost sight of the reality that America has been shifting slowly but surely to the right for the last generation, for the last 40 years. There are people on the far left who've never lost sight of that. But I'm not talking about the intellectuals and the extremists on either end. Well, there's really no intellectuals on the other end of the spectrum, but I digress. Not anymore, but let me not go off on that tangent. Let me leave them alone this morning. But on the far left, some people have kept their eye on the ball. Noam Chomsky is one of those people. He has consistently kept his eye on the reality that America has been shifting to the right every election cycle, and that shift has been because of a nonstop propaganda machine that has made most of America cower in fear, and has made the Democratic Party cower in fear and shift to the right. And that's one of the things that he says in his clip. And I'm going to play some of that clip. But it's indicative. It reveals the reality that not only are we subject and prone to be influenced by propaganda, but then we get politicians and leaders who are a direct reflection of our fears that have been fueled by propaganda. As much as people love Barack Obama is still all but a moderate Republican. Look at the metrics that we judge President Obama's success on. Every metric that we have that Democrats are circling around saying that President Obama is a success, President Obama has done a great job. By those metrics, he has done a great job. But every single one of those metrics is a part of the neoliberal paradigm. So we're not judging President Obama on progressive principles. We're judging President Obama on principles that have been spoon-fed to us from Republicans, from conservatism, from neoliberals. And so we take those metrics, and because we're so motivated to defend and protect and support President Obama, which I absolutely get because he's faced unprecedented opposition. But we take the metrics of neoliberalism, we take the metrics of conservatism, we take Republican metrics, and we gauge President Obama's success by that. And so by the Ronald Reagan standard, President Obama has been a hell of a president. Here's the trick, though. They will swear that President Obama, Republicans will swear that President Obama is a socialist and a communist and a Maoist. Look at how absolute their positions have become. That even by their beloved Ronald Reagan standard, President Obama is a great Republican president. But because of their need to oppose him by any means, because of their need to get more out of the system, because of their absolute insane love affair with trickle-down economic theories, extreme trickle-down. We're not just talking about the paradigm that we're no longer talking about Ronald Reagan's paradigm. We're talking about a group of Republicans who want to take us even further to the right. So much so that President Obama, who would have been gotten a pat on the back from Ronald Reagan, is considered a socialist. This is the propaganda machine that has been pushing America further and further and further and further to the right. Now, what Noam Chomsky says in this clip, and I'm going to play for it. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't agree with Noam Chomsky on a lot of things. I've actually written, and nobody cares what I write about Noam Chomsky, right? But I've actually written a couple of articles criticizing his critique of what's going on in America because, you know, I just don't agree with anything, with everything rather that he has said. But in what he's getting ready to say, and I have this clip from Democracy Now! And I want to play it. What he's saying here is absolutely the truth. And just to set it up, it was it came from a question in the audience asking what does he think about Donald Trump and American exceptionalism. So let's listen in.
I think we should recognize that the other candidates are not that different. I mean, if you take a look at, just take a look at their views. You know, they tell you their views, and they're astonishing. So just to keep to Iran, a couple of weeks ago, the two front runners, they're not the front runners any longer, were Jeb Bush and Scott Walker, and they differed on Iran. Walker said, we have to bomb Iran. When he gets elected, they're going to bomb Iran immediately, the day he's elected. Bush was a little, you know, he's more serious. He said he's going to wait to the first cabinet meeting, and then they'll bomb Iran. I mean, this is just off the spectrum of not only international opinion, but even relative sanity.
All right, that's the first clip. That's him discussing how extreme that the Republican Party has become. We're no longer talking about, and I love how he phrased it. He said, we're not talking about international norms. We're talking about the spectrum of sanity. Conservatives and Republicans have gone so far off the spectrum of sanity that they are not electable without these extreme portions of America that stand up in the New Hampshire rally and ask about President Obama's birth certificate and call him a Muslim, even though it really shouldn't matter whether or not he was Muslim or all the above, right? Or none of the above. This is the insanity that they have pushed. So it's not only an economic insanity, it is a militaristic insanity where now it's becoming acceptable for people who are running in for the candidacy, the people who are running for the Republican nomination. That's what I'm looking for. They are talking about bombing a nation when there's actually an opportunity to not have to bomb them. But it has become so acceptable that people who don't talk about bombing are considered weak. These are the extremes. And there are religious people who just go along with this because of what? Because Republicans oppose abortion, because Republicans oppose gay marriage. There are so many religious evangelicals who just go along for the ride for things that are absolutely against their religion because the Republican ostensibly supports pro-life and because they support traditional marriage. And these are the people that Noam Chomsky is talking about. He's saying that Republicans could never get in office ever again if not for the insane, crazy zealots, for the nativists. That's the word he used. The nativists, racists, this vein of American that has been in America since the founding. There have always been these type of crazies in America, but the Republican Party has gone so far to the right on economic issues and on political and international foreign affairs issues that they cannot get office without the crazies. All right, let me play a little bit more Noam Chomsky because he's saying it better than I could. Let's listen in.
This is, I think Ornstein and Mann are correct. It's a radical insurgency. It's not a political party. You can tell that even by the votes. I mean, any issue of any complexity is going to have some diversity of opinion. But when you get a unanimous vote to kill the Iranian deal or the Affordable Care Act or whatever the next thing may be, you know you're not dealing with a political party.
All right, that's the next clip. And I'm breaking these up for many reasons, folks. Well, the least of which is not Google's algorithm. All right, so here is that extremism again on display, and we see this. It's almost like a litmus test. You cannot have any diversity of opinion in Republican circles. And I did one of my very first, actually, I think it is my first video on YouTube. It's talking about the totalitarianism of the Republican Party. And I cast the conversation in light of Bill O'Reilly and some of the things that he was saying at the time. If you want to go back and take a look at that, I actually really nailed that. But it is a totalitarian mindset that anyone who wavers one bit from this conservative, dogmatic religion. Conservatism has become a religion. Religious tenets that are accepted by faith, despite evidence to the contrary. See, at least with traditional religion and Christianity, it's almost impossible to prove a negative, right? You can't prove that something doesn't exist. But in conservative circles, we can prove that neoliberal economics, laissez-faire economics, and trickle-down economics does not work. We can prove that let me circle back and make that statement a little more correct. Neoliberalism works, but to the detriment of the poor around the globe. Right? Trickle down economics just does not work. Supply side theory does not work, right? It works for the top 1%. It doesn't work for anyone else. We have evidence that shows that what they believe does not work, but they still accept it as a tenet of faith. It is the conservative religion. And that religion, they also incorporate into that religion the opposition to anybody who's going to do anything on the environment, because it will cost us money and it will cost industry money. And so they wrap it in this dominionism idea from the Bible that God created the world for us to have dominion over. And if God gave us dominion over it, then how can we ever mess it up? Idiocy like that, right? This has become the Republican religion, the conservative religion that is accepted by faith, and that anyone who opposes it, well, you're a socialist, you're a fascist, you're a Leninist, a Maoist, even though all those things are incompatible. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with these type of absolutists that are trying to force us into this false dichotomy that does not exist. There is a difference. There is something in between their idiocy on the extreme right and communism. But so long as they keep casting the conversation and the narrative in terms of either it's laissez-faire capitalism and we unleash the markets and we take down regulation and we make the government as small as possible, either we do that or you're a communist. Well, anybody who is rational and has a modicum of common sense realizes that is not the case. All right, let me play this last clip by, this is where he really nails it. This is Noam Chomsky over the weekend, and I think it's a brilliant clip.
It's an interesting question why that's true. I think what's actually happened is that during the whole so-called neoliberal period, last generation, both political parties have drifted to the right. Today's Democrats are what used to be called moderate Republicans. Mm-hmm. The Republicans have just drifted off the spectrum. They're so committed to extreme wealth and power that they cannot get votes, can't get votes by presenting those positions. So what has happened is that they've mobilized sectors of the population that have been around for a long time.
And that's exactly what I've been saying on this show forever. The Republican Party has shifted so far to the right, and because of the most effective propaganda machine that we've seen definitely it has been my entire lifetime. I don't know a world outside of the propaganda machine that has been relentlessly pounding the drums of laissez-faire neoliberalism for the last 35 years. Every moment of if you were born after 1980, every moment of your life has been inundated with propaganda that makes you fear socialism and think that anything short of a unfettered capitalistic free market is communism. And because of that, the realistic notion is that Republicans have been destroying their own party, but they've been maintaining power on the backs of these nativists, of these racists, of these just extreme ideologues and religious zealots. And that combination has made a conservative religion that trumps, no pun intended at all, that trumps their own Christian faith. And now that there is a pope, and I'll talk about the pope in the next segment, now that there is a pope who actually does what the Bible says in terms of the poor, does what the Bible says in terms of peace, and wants to take care of the environment. Now that there's a pope that is contrary to this conservative religion, well, their religion, their new ideology, their new idolatry actually supersedes their own Christian faith. And this is why this week is going to be fascinating. You will see hour after hour on Fox News, on Rush Limbaugh, and on all of the conservative media propaganda machine. You will see them elevating their conservative religion over their Christianity. All right, folks, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to play this last clip by Noam Chomsky, and then I'm going to discuss I'm going to discuss the Republican opposition to Pope Francis and this false dichotomy between extreme capitalism and communism. We'll be back after this.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
Warm fleece on a cold day. I want to be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back. We want you to join the conversation, 857-600-0518, and share your thoughts about what I call the Republican religion, conservative religion. It actually supersedes their own Christianity. And this will be on display all this week. Every day that the Pope is in this country, you will see exactly who has placed capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism at that, above their Christianity. Right? They've placed their opposition to any action to tamper the effects of global warming above their responsibility to take care of the planet. They placed it above. They've placed everything that is inside of the conservative dogma above their own faith that they then turn around and try to force everyone else to live by. That's the sick, twisted irony. That is what goes on in the minds of these people. And I am tired of considering this to be a conversation between two equals. They are not equal to progressivism. They are not equal to that is a false, what is the word? A false equivalency. The extremism that we see that is the normal Republican Party is so far to the left, to the right of anything normal, that they have caused an imbalance in America where everything has shifted to the right. So far to the right that now Democrats today are nothing more than Republicans from the old days. All right, let me play a little more of Noam Chomsky and let him finish what he's saying.
It is a pretty exceptional country in many ways. One is it's extremely religious. It's one of the most extreme fundamentalist countries in the world. And by now, I suspect the majority of the base of the Republican Party is evangelical Christians, extremists. Not, they're a mixture, but these are the extremist ones. Nativists who are afraid that they are taking our white Anglo-Saxon country away from us, people who have to have guns when they go into Starbucks because who knows, they might be killed by an Islamic terrorist and so on. I mean, all of that is part of the country, and it goes back to colonial days. There are real roots to it. But these have not been an organized political force in the past. They are now. That's the base of the Republican Party. And you see it in the primaries. So yeah, Trump is maybe comic relief, but it's just it's not that different from the mainstream, which I think is more important.
That is the scary part. But I'm applauding Noam Chomsky. I actually reference him a lot, and like I said, I don't agree with him on everything, because I just don't, and I don't have to. So that's the main thing. But on this, I agree with him 100%. That, you know, in terms of everyone's looking at Donald Trump as this buffoon, but Donald Trump is the quintessential Republican in 2016. Number one, I would put above anything else is confusion about what they really stand for, about their ideology, about what's good for for what's good for the middle class. Donald Trump has not solidified his ideology because it does not neatly fit into the totalitarianism that is the modern Republican Party, right? And that is probably quite a few people in the not in the rank and file, but just their base, people who realize that I've been voting against my best economic interests for so long, but they can't quite pull themselves to say that, because that would mean they would have to concede that they have been voting for the wrong party. They've been voting. They've been voting for the wrong ideology. Right? Because parties change throughout history, but ideologies don't. They've been aligning with an ideology that has been detrimental to their own best interests. So there's a lot of confusion, I would say, first and foremost, in the minds of conservatives who actually think that they're voting in their best economic interests, but they have been sabotaging their best economic interests for the last 35 plus years. That's number one. Then he is a quintessential Republican because of his nativism, his natural appeal to white men and the fear that white men have about losing their country, particularly conservative men. But there's some people who identify as progressive who actually feel this way too. I can name a few, but I won't, because I'm talking about conservatives today, right? But conservatives, they have this fear that America is being taken away from them. Maybe it's out of guilt because they know they've taken America away from the Native Americans. I don't know. Maybe it's this long psychosis of paranoia because they realize what they've done to African Americans and how this country was built in the first place. Maybe they just have this unbridled guilt that's weighing on their back because they know that if people actually responded to them the way that white men have responded to people throughout history, then maybe they should carry their guns. Because if we responded to them the way they did us, then, well, hell, I'd carry a gun too. Whatever the reason is, Donald Trump has been appealing to this, and I just use the word again. This is from Noam Chomsky. This nativism that has been prevalent in American history, and it was relegated to the corners, the dark corners of where people wouldn't go, right? Nobody would talk about what happened at the white supremacist meetings and at the Klan rallies. And the Klan used to have to, they were wide open during Jim Crow, but there was a period where they could not be as brash and open. And now it's come full circle and they're back on full display in all of their white supremacist grandeur. And they're unashamed because they have a candidate like Donald Trump. And the reality is Donald Trump has simply taken the veil off of the dog whistles. And he has simply said, I'm not going to be subtle with this, because this is the exact group of people that the Republicans have been catering to and pandering to for the last 40, 50 years since Goldwater lost his election. And they realized that conservatism, as it is, where it stands, cannot win office on a national level. It can win on a local level, but it could not win on a national level. And ever since then, or whatever the right phrase, I don't know. Ever since then, they have been catering to Christian evangelicals. They've been pandering to them, rather. They've been pandering to the Southern strategy, the people who are the nativists who are fearful of anything that's not white. They've been pandering to all of these bases, all of the components of their base that represents the worst of America. And now, as I said last week, their chickens have come home to roost because that nativist base has taken over. And that is why Donald Trump is number one and Ben Carson, depending on which poll you look, is number two. This is a fascinating thing to me because it is the direct result of propaganda, nonstop propaganda in the media, in the media where we can't have a reasonable conversation about simple things that would make America better for everyone by investing in the sector of America that benefits everyone, and that's the middle class. But once we start talking about simple middle class economics, we are now labeled as socialist, or we have been labeled as socialist for the last 30 years. And this is what is so amazing to me, because of this absolutist position of the Republicans. They have been so brazen with it. They don't care, to the point where they will betray. They are able to betray their own religion that they want to imbue on us. They want to force on us, rather. They can openly betray it, and now their base doesn't even care. That's the fascinating thing. Now, the way they are attacking the Pope, and I want to bring up this article so I can just give you some examples. The way they are attacking the Pope openly, unashamedly, and they are letting everything about capitalism and everything about the global warming and the opposition to to doing anything about global warming, all of that is trumping their faith that they're trying to shove down our throats. And so over the next couple of days, while some people are boycotting the Pope speaking because of his positions on capitalism, when he said that capitalism hurts the poor, that is essentially what he said. Capitalism hurts the poor. Is there anybody in the world who can actually fix their face to say that capitalism has not had a negative effect on the poor across the globe? Capitalism is all about the extraction of wealth, charging the highest price possible and paying labor the lowest cost possible. It has always been about exploitation, economic exploitation. That's the entire impetus behind slavery. That is the entire impetus about of exporting our jobs overseas, outsourcing our jobs overseas, and so that they can find labor that's cheaper than what they would have to pay here in the United States. That is the entire paradigm. So when the Pope says that capitalism run amok is bad for the poor, how can anybody with a modicum of common sense call him a socialist simply because he's telling the truth about capitalism? And how can people who have been beating us across the head with their religion for the last 40 plus years now ignore their religion when they get a religious leader who is actually living according to their religion? That is some twisted mental contortions that would rival borderline genius if it wasn't so nefarious. Their ability to twist their opinions and rationalize their opinions to themselves is something to behold. I mean, that borderline's genius, but it's so detrimental to the broader conversation of how we fix some of the fundamental problems that we have in our society that you can't give them that kind of credit. If anything, you would just call them evil geniuses. And that's what I would call people like Bill O'Reilly, who clearly doesn't believe half the things that he says. But because the paycheck is good, and I understand, Bill O'Reilly, you want that paycheck. Hell, all of us want that paycheck. But to sell out your soul, and not even in the spiritual sense, right? But just to sell out your ability to think rationally, or your ability to tell the truth, because there is absolutely nothing that the Pope has said that is radical. This is the extreme world that we live in. The Pope has not said anything revolutionary or radical. He has simply pointed out that capitalism, by run amok, is not good for every person in the world. It is actually bad for the poorest people who Christians are supposed to look out for. But because he dare say anything, this is the world we can't say anything negative or give any type of critique about this trickle-down world, because it's no longer just laissez-faire neoliberalism, right? We're talking about a very specific paradigm that has not only exacerbated poverty, but has destroyed the middle class. So if you say anything about correcting this for your own good, mind you, right? Can I go on a long tangent? I want to go on a long tangent here. Neoliberals, particularly progressive neoliberals, let's just take FDR, for instance. The people who helped create the New Deal, they weren't necessarily good-hearted people. I'm not saying they were bad, but they weren't necessarily doing this because they wanted to help people. They realized something. They realized that if you do not temper the effects of capitalism run amok, you will be faced with a revolution from the poor. And well, there was no middle class, right? The middle class had been hadn't been completely formed yet. This is exactly, everyone read the Communist Manifesto. Let's just be real. Everyone read it. Capitalists read it, and socialists and communists read it. Capitalists, neoliberals said, you know what? He's got a point. Because if you read the manifesto, his diagnosis of the problems with capitalism is accurate. His remedy, I don't even agree with, right? His remedy was like, don't leave any inheritance for your children. Well, no, I'm sorry, Mark. I'm going to save up as much money as I can to leave it to my kids, right? This 10-point solution was just completely in left field, right? But the capitalists looked at, in my opinion, I'm sure there's some true communists listening, but in terms of the capitalists that read it, they realized we have to do something because he's right. Capitalism will always implode underneath its own pressure if you do not regulate it, and it will be faced by a proletariat revolution if you don't assuage the effects of it. And so the entire middle class was built as a means of pacifying people who otherwise would have stood up in revolt. And so the modest criticism that the Pope has given about capitalism in general is not revolutionary at all. It is not radical at all. It's not even an existential threat to capitalism. It is a means by which capitalism can survive. So here is the Pope giving you advice, which not really advice, is just a sermon, right? He gave a sermon about capitalism and how it cannot destroy itself, what's in all of their best interest. And they call him a communist, and they say he doesn't belong here in America. And that, do you see the extremes? And I don't think I can be demonstrative as I fuddle that through that word. I don't think that I can demonstrate this to you enough. There is no hyperbole in this. I'm not exaggerating. We are dealing with people that if you say one negative word about capitalism, and then this particular brand of capitalism, which is supply side capitalism that we've been living under for the last 35 years. If you say one negative word about that, you are a communist. You are a socialist. You are a fascist, a Leninist, a Maoist. And that is the extreme that we have been living in for a very long time. So what do you expect from a voting populace who gets their news from Fox News and gets their news from Rush Limbaugh and gets their news from cowardly outfits, some fake progressive outfits that are afraid to be progressive? What do you expect other than a general fear of anything other than what's currently happening? So you fall in love, not fall in love, you become complacent with the status quo, even though the status quo has been hurting you for generations, because you are fearful. You yourself have become fearful of any idea other than that which they have been shoving down our throats and caping it all in religion. And now we get this beautiful moment in American history where we get to see them completely exposed. And I don't know if if the media is really going to point this out. Everyone's talking about the Pope. Whose hand is he going to shake? Is he going to hug people? They're talking about all of these frivolous things, but they're not pointing out this glaring contradiction that the conservative faith, because it is a religion, conservative religion, and the tenets of their religion absolutely trumps their own Christianity because of how glaringly they are opposing the Pope, all because he said that we need to take care of the environment. And he said that global warming, man has exacerbated the effects of global warming. And he has said that capitalism has a negative effect on the poor. These very simple reformist, not revolutionary ideas. And so long as conservatives are able to label that as radical revolutionary and communism and socialism, then we will never be able to have a rational debate on policies that would actually help sustain their model. And that, my friends, is the world that we're living in. All right, I only have a few more minutes left. Let me take one quick break, folks. I want to pull up next. The most glaring examples of this would be Martin Shkreli and his hiking of the price of Daraprim to $750 from $13, and he has a history of that. And another example of this would be Stuart Parnell of the Peanut Corporation of America and his blatant cover-up. And now he's going to jail. All right, folks, we'll be back after this break.
You're tuned into the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Hey, no,
right.
No,
All right. So this false dichotomy that I'm talking about, this is the brick wall to insulate a broken paradigm that Republicans have placed, conservatives in particular, have erected this brick wall where there can be no criticism whatsoever about a broken system that is working great for the top 1% and working great for those who have access to capital, but has devastated the middle class and continues to exacerbate poverty, not only in America, but across the globe. That is a succinct definition of trickle-down economics, supply-side theory, based off the Laffer curve, and I'll do a show on the Laffer curve. This entire economic paradigm that the Reaganomics that was built off of a graph drawn on a napkin at a dinner table. That's the concept that we've been living under for the last 35 years. But they've erected this brick wall to protect any criticism of it, so that anyone who says anything negative or brings any correction or suggests any policy that would be counter to that is considered a communist, a socialist, right? And considered to be an extremist, when it's really just moderates who are just trying to reform this system so that it can survive longer. The entire debate for the last, let's go beyond Reaganomics. Let's just talk about the entire neoliberal period that has been in America. The entire conversation for, I would say, the last 50 years has been a conversation between two different groups of the same ideology, neoliberals. It has been between extreme neoliberals who want to go even further, and there is never enough. The profit margins can always be higher. Pay no regard to anything, any collateral damage. Let's just keep going as far as we possibly can go. And another group of neoliberals who don't want to change the entire paradigm. They just want to reform some key elements so that the paradigm can continue. That has been the conversation between Democrats and Republicans, definitely for the last 35 years. I would argue that maybe 40, 45 years, this is how long this has been going on. So there's no question that we're not even talking about two different political economic ideologies. We're talking about one ideology that has been split into two factions. And that's what Noam Chomsky was talking about. He's saying Democrats today, they can have a big D by their name all they want. They're nothing more than moderate Republicans from 50 years ago. And so this brick wall has been erected to insulate any criticism, insulate this Reaganomic, which is an extreme version of capitalism, as close to laissez-faire capitalism as they can possibly take us. Deregulation. Let's deregulate everything. Ronald Reagan was the first one to start the ball of deregulation. And then you see Bill Clinton continued it. This is how you know it has been one conversation. It has been one ideology with two different perspectives. That's it. That's all it's been. Right? The Democrats and Republicans are two sides of the same coin. But anyone who brings criticism to it or any correction to it, even their more moderate neoliberals, are considered to be fascists, which has created this totalitarian mindset that anyone who wavers one iota away from the conservative religion is a heretic and an extremist. And we have bought into this for the last 40 years. And now it's there's so many things that are glaringly obvious that the media is not as, I don't think that they're pointing it out enough. I think it needs to be driven home and pounded and pounded and pounded until people wake up and realize that we don't have to put up with these two extremes. We don't have to either let Martin Shkreli of Turing Pharmaceuticals run and raise the price of Daraprim from $3.50 to, from $13.50 to $750. Or if we criticize that, we're communist. Those are not logical choices. That is a very false dichotomy. There are so many other options in between there, but that's the world that we've been living in, right? Is if you criticize this move, if you ever criticize the profit motive, then you are an extremist. When in actuality, we are living in an extreme time when a person can take a life-saving drug, and because he's surprised that this drug only costs $1,000 to save a life, he can inflate that price by 5,500%. And we're not supposed to criticize that, because if we do, then we must be some type of revolutionary. What happens when you allow this absolutist position to continue is that you get exactly what is expected when profit is placed at the center of everything, without any regulation, without any regard to what it does to the poor, without any regard for the negative consequences that it has on your citizenry. You get capitalism run amok. And capitalism, my friends, will absolutely destroy itself if not for the moderate neoliberals, Democrats, who are, progressives, who are simply trying to fix this paradigm. Now, you have some people on the far left who say just to hell with the whole paradigm. I'll leave you guys to argue about that. That's between you and your true communist friends. But I'm talking about within the framework that we're living in, we're getting pushed so far to the right where we can no longer, that Bernie Sanders is considered an extremist. That is complete idiocy. When you think about the fact that he's not talking about doing anything revolutionary, he's not talking about anything that is not without precedent in the United States. He's not talking about doing anything but making sure that there will always be a middle class that can buy the crap that these corporations make. I'm going to continue to drive that single point home this entire episode, and I only have 5 minutes left, so don't worry, it's almost over. But even Bernie Sanders, our resident socialist, he's really just a reformist who is saying, let's fix this paradigm so that you will always have customers in America that can buy your crap on Black Friday. Because if you don't, then you're going to be looking overseas for all of your customers, which will leave America one of two things. Either it would leave us open to another company to come in and take your profits, or it's really going to make us the labor force. And I think the latter is true. We are pushing in a realm where wages are going down, down, down in the United States. Everyone is getting a part-time job servicing some major international corporation, and we are becoming the labor pool here in the United States. And now they're looking over to countries like China that are developing a middle class to get their profits from there. Apple, I can't remember how many years ago, but their profit that they received from China was only 2%. 2% of their revenues came from China. Now, 25% of their revenues comes from China. And so it's happening before our eyes, right? We are devastating the American middle class, and we're pushing us to the point where we will take any job we can get. We will go work at Starbucks. We'll go work at McDonald's. We'll work for minimum wage. We'll do Airbnb and let strangers into our house. We'll take our car and turn it into a taxi and join Uber. Anything we can do just to survive, all because we have taken away the investments in the middle class. And we've replaced those investments by turning it, instead of social welfare, we've turned it over into corporate welfare. And so it's not enough. This is the icing on the cake. And then I'll take this call. The icing on the cake is, let me hit that button all the way. There we go. The icing on the cake is not just that we're taking from the middle class, that they're outsourcing jobs. The icing on the cake is not just that they are that we're taking lower salaries, that the middle class is being destroyed right before our eyes. The icing on the cake is that they are taking taxpayer dollars and doing it to us with our own money. the subsidies, the import-export bank, all the different ways that they get benefits from outsourcing and from doing the business that they do that has been detrimental to us. Those are funded on the back, government contracts. They are funded on the back of the taxpayer. So you and I are paying for our own demise, economic demise, as we watch these international corporations just run as far as they possibly can. We see a CEO, finally, the only person to be arrested since Bernie Madoff, right? This guy is going to be faced with 28 years, but this is only after people have died because of the salmonella outbreak, because of their faulty leadership, mismanagement, just blatant disregard to our safety. And this is what capitalism run amok will always do to you. Caller, what is your name, comment, and our question?
Hey, this is Justin, man. I appreciate the show. Your analysis is spot on. I have just two things to say. One, my thought is that short of a mass movement in the street, I don't see that changing. I mean, you conceded that both of these parties are essentially two sides of the same coin. I don't believe an election is going to move our oligarchic, psychopathic elites to do differently. And it seems like anybody who's elected can be, modified. So, yeah, be purchased, bought, and sold at on some level, whether it's through threats or through, access to power. And also, before you end the show, I was hoping you could give me a prediction on who do you think will win this, Republican
nomination. Yeah. Okay. Not a problem. Yeah. Justin. So here's the thing about protest in the street. We've had it, and we need to continue to have it, right? I think Occupy Wall Street started something that allowed us to finally have these conversations. And so I have to applaud them for getting the conversation started. The problem is once you leave it in the streets, it can die. If you don't get into these, and this is where I completely disagree with a lot of people on the far left who say, forget about the political structure because it's so corrupt. But here's the thing: if you take that organizing power and that organizing energy of an Occupy Wall Street and now Black Lives Matter, and you inject that into this political system, into the primaries, forget about the general election, into the primaries, you can take over. We can take over any party we want to take over. But we have been so fearful of getting political because of the fear of being co-opted and the fear of being bought out, and because of the negative stigma that is attached to politics, that we've left our protests in the streets. And they're okay. I mean, the system, my friend, the system is so capable of absorbing any level of protest. The only thing they cannot stop is a true political revolution where we get into these parties and say, we're taking over this party because you can't survive without our vote, right? Imagine Black Lives Matter being so solidified that really we say it's either this or you don't get any of our vote whatsoever. Well, we bring the Democratic Party to their knees. And I think that's what has to happen. We have to bring these neoliberals to their knees and make them realize, if you want to call yourself a progressive, well, damn it, you have to legislate like a progressive. Now, to answer your second question, because time is running out, I honestly believe that if Trump continues, Trump is going to win the nomination, because Trump has galvanized, short of some antics and some manipulation by the party, I don't see anybody who can stop Trump. Trump is untouchable. They're afraid of Trump, and when they try to attack him, it backfires because he's playing to a base that loves his assholery, if I can make up a word.
No, I concur. However, I do take the antics, the party's antics and machinations as a given. So I'm not sold that Trump is going to walk away with the nomination. I think all these folks can be touched, if you know what I mean, streetwise, and so he can be convinced. He can be convinced that for all his dollars, that he's not the man for the job, and he'll find a way, as people have been saying, that he'll find a way to step out and be the kingmaker, play kingmaker.
Well, I tell you something. I mean, you took it to the next level right there. If we're talking about that, then anybody can be touched in that regard. But short of anything draconian like that or Machiavellian like that, I don't see anybody stopping Trump, because he is he has the special combination that all of the crazies in the base want. And we see that the crazies, think of it this way, and then we got to go because the show is actually over. You have three parts of the base of the Republican Party. You have the establishment, who is right now in the minority. You have the evangelical Christians, who have elevated Ben Carson to the number 2, number 3 spot, depending on which poll you look at. And then you have the crazies, you have the bigots, you have the insane people, like we saw in New Hampshire, and they have elevated Trump to number 1. With that combination that the party has been playing to for so long, you see the establishment is in the minority. So I'll put it like this: whoever can galvanize that crazy vote as well as the evangelical vote, they will win, because the establishment is in the minority. Justin,
I'll be watching. I enjoy the show. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for your call. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to appreciate you. Thank you for being here with me all of this time. I want you to go over to facebook.com/The Benjamin Dixon Show. Click on the contact. Actually, go to BenjaminDixon.com, TheBenjaminDixonShow.com. Click on the Contact Us tab. And I want you to drop us a note. Go over to Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at The BPD Show. Follow us on Spreaker. You know what to do. And we'll see you tomorrow.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
Which we need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.